Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 4 of the See You at the Top podcast. I'm happy to be joined by Nanci Wilson, VP of Member Solutions down at the Louisiana Credit Union League. So thanks, Nanci, for joining the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we were just talking a little bit beforehand, and I see a lot of the things that you're sharing on social and just what you do with the league, and I'm super impressed with what your message is and what you bring to the table as far as a leadership perspective. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today, just to hear a little bit more about your journey, but then also, the tips that you can share to our listeners as well.
I'm excited to have this conversation with you. I've been looking forward to it all week. So
Awesome. So let's start there. Let's start with your story. Tell me, how did you start? I know you've been at the league now for a little while. How did you get into that role? Tell me where you started and what led you to where you're at.
Well, when I started in the credit union was by pure serendipity, and I say that in the best way possible because I was in top 40 radio before this. I actually talk about Justin Bieber way too much to feel comfortable with my life, and I had actually fallen on some hard times medically. I had just had my child not long ago. Christmas was coming up. So I went to my bank. This is where people hiss. I went to my bank and I asked for a small dollar amount loan for Christmas. I was a mom on a mission, right? I was like, I need to have Christmas for my child. I need to feel like I'm providing. I asked for a $300 loan, and he did what a lot of financial institutions do. They went to the universal printer in the middle of the room and judged me all the way back with my credit score. And he sat across from me, and I'll never ever forget what he said to me. He said, "Not only will I not give you this loan, you probably will never own your own home either."
Wow.
And it was at that moment that I felt that financial shame that you hear so much about, that credit score shame, that just shame in general. It just felt very bad.
Yeah.
So I got up from there. I didn't say much. I got up. I pulled my funds that day. But as like I said, a mom on a mission, I went to a temporary location that a credit union had just opened up at. I had no idea what a credit union was, but I knew what I wanted. So I walked in there, and the difference was immediate. I met with the loan officer immediately. And when I told the story, she got tears in her eyes. She reached over across from her desk and touched my hand and said, "I completely understand." She gave me that loan. And within a couple months, they were looking for a teller. And I thought, oh my gosh, they've that power she had of kindness and empathy is something that I try to live in my life every single day. And it just fits so well. And I'm like, I want to be that person. I
Yeah.
want to be that person for someone else. So I applied with absolutely no education to count anybody's money or do anything for anybody financially. I applied for the teller position and I got it. And so that's where my credit union journey began. It simply began because I was treated unkindly at another financial institution. And the shame that came along with that
Yeah.
was enough to make me kind of do an about face and learn about credit unions and why were they able to help me versus why my bank was not able to help me. So I really went down the rabbit hole of knowing the difference and wanting to know the difference. But 2 years after I got that job as a teller, I bought my own home and I sent that
Oh,
banker an open house invitation. He didn't
that's
come,
awesome.
but I did send him I wanted him to know that his crystal ball was wrong,
Yeah.
that those numbers that he was judging me on, it did not define who I was as a person or my drive to be better and do better.
Yeah.
So, so that's kind of how I started.
Okay. No, that's awesome. So how did your journey take you from starting at that credit union as a teller to where you're at currently with the Louisiana Credit Union League?
Oh my gosh, such a whirlwind of awesomeness. So I will say that it started out at my CEO at my first credit union called and she said, "Hey, there is this class that they do at the National Credit Union Foundation called CUDE." And she literally said, "I have no idea what it is, but it says it's for passionate people, and I think I'm going to send you." And I'm like, "Okay, let's go." So I was fresh. I was a fresh teller when I went to DE.
Okay.
And I remember sitting in that class learning about things going, I have no idea what I'm doing here. There is so many people with so much knowledge. And I can't even really give you my elevator speech on a credit union yet. I was still working on that.
Sure.
But I left DE a changed person. And I always say, I know that sounds cheesy, and it kind of does, but it's true. You go to DE, and you know if you are meant for the credit union movement by the time you get done with DE. You know where you want to be. So I came back jazzed, and I was ready to roll, and I was met with that, there's kind of that DE high. If you're a DE, you know what that means.
Yep.
And you come back and you're like, I've got all the ideas, and let's start. And you're fuming at every single orifice that you have, and you're like, I want to just give you this passion. And you're kind of met with, okay, well, just do your job. That'd
Yep.
be great,
Yep.
And I had to make a decision that I wasn't going to let that melancholy attitude that I was met with um, determine how I was going to move forward with my DE designation. So I started really digging my heels into my community, what I wanted to see, what we weren't doing for our community as far as a credit union and the cooperative spirit, and I really started to move ahead, which made me kind of rethink where I was in the credit union and what I want to be when I grew up. I
Yeah.
didn't know. I just knew that the credit union was it. So I went from a teller to a member service manager, and I love teller work. I want to give a shout out to all of the tellers. They are the heartbeat of our credit unions,
Agreed.
and they are the face of our credit unions. And shout out to them, because they take the good, the bad, the ugly, and they do it every single day, day
Hmm.
in and day out. And so I love the tellers. I love teller work. I just knew that I wanted to do something else, and I didn't know what. So I messaged my CEO, because apparently I don't have any boundaries. And I said, I would like to go to lunch. I would like to pitch something. We were merging a lot,
Mm.
um, and we didn't have a training program. I thought, I can do that. Again, I really didn't have any backing of why I thought I could do that, but I just knew I wanted to do it. Um, so I pitched it. I interviewed for the job. I got the job. So I started to do a training, a little bit of marketing in there. And I just grew. The connections grew. The more conferences I went to grew. The people I met uh, really helped me grow. So many mentors along the way. And then I met Mr. Juan Fernandez, and I met him in a share ride. I had no idea who he was. Uh, and I have no idea to this day why I thought he was with credit unions, but I could feel it, David. I know that sounds really weird,
No, I
but I could
gotcha.
feel it. And I turned around and I said, "Are you with credit unions?" And he goes, "That could have been real weird and awkward, David."
Yeah.
But he goes, "I am," and we have connected ever since. He's helped me grow. He's helped me motivate me to reach further, to find out where I want to be. I'm so grateful for that share ride, that serendipitous moment where I thought, I'm going to, go out on a limb and either be super awkward, or he really is with credit unions. And we've kept in contact. And um, the league world, how I ended up in the league world, is my love for credit unions is wonderful. And I was super loyal to the credit unions I worked for. But as a league person, I get to love a lot of credit unions,
Yeah.
and that my heart is big for credit unions. So I have so it became kind of a full circle moment. He had gotten a position as the CEO at Louisiana Credit Unions, and there was a position that opened up, and I thought, I'm I'm going to try. I again, absolutely no paper to say that I deserve to be where I am, or am educated to be where I am, but I absolutely have the passion and the purpose to do it. And so I applied, and I went from teller to VP of Member Solutions at the Louisiana Credit Union League. And I'm a North Dakota girl. I work remotely, so I'm in North
Oh,
Dakota.
okay.
So I freeze, and then I go to New Orleans and Louisiana to thaw, and then I come. Our convention is July, and I'm convinced they're trying to kill me.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But no, my journey's just been. I really will say, it's been the best journey of my life, and I say that because it was the first moment in my life where I felt like being Nancy was okay. I could be Nanci,
Oh,
not to a minimum,
yeah.
not to, not I didn't have to dim who I was to fit into this movement. And that's what really made me want to just bust out at the seams and go for whatever.
Yeah,
So,
that's awesome. Well, a couple things, and I'm sure you'll elaborate on throughout our conversation, but just that don't give a crap. I mean, I don't know
yeah,
how else to put it, but like,
yeah,
nothing stopped you from taking a chance. That you were just like, it doesn't matter if maybe I'm not qualified, or maybe I don't have
yeah,
the credentials or whatever, as you
yeah.
mentioned. But the fact that you were willing to strike up a conversation randomly, the fact that you were willing to apply for these positions, the fact that you were willing to put yourself out there, I think is such a testament to your character and who you are as a leader, but then also just as a person. And so I applaud you for that approach, because there's a lot of people who fear stops them in their tracks from taking those chances, right?
Oh, I was that person. I definitely was that person up until this, and I think the DE course, that's where who I was met what the credit union was, and the movement as a whole. And I realized that who I was meshed so nicely with what the credit union stands for, that I didn't have to be a fraction version of myself anymore.
Yeah.
I could be who I was. And yeah, there's something about turning in your 30s, 40s, where your give a darn gets busted, and you're like, you know what, I'm gonna go for it. And it just hit at the right time. And I really am grateful for whatever switch flipped in me that said, it's your turn. It's your turn.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you did touch on it a little bit, so I'll give you an opportunity to elaborate if you wish. But so you talked about your transition from starting on the teller line to into like a manager position and now at the VP role. When did you know you wanted to take on this leadership? Was it just truly because of the experience you had at DE, or was there more to it than that?
I think that we can all agree that we've had leaders that are less than stellar, and I say that with the best of intentions. I think there's people that are. That want to be leaders. There's people that are born to be leaders, and there's people that absolutely can build the skills to be a leader. I realize that there is a lot in my journey, that there is a lot of leaders out there that like the intimidation factor. They like the
Mm,
intimidation leadership. And I, unfortunately, was at a credit union at one point that had that intimidation. It really became a cutthroat type of atmosphere. Who can you step on to get wherever you're going?
yeah.
That wasn't my jam, and I knew very well that that wasn't my jam. However, I'm grateful for living through that, because it taught me how I did not want to lead in the future, and
Yep.
the leader I did not want to be. It really gave me a perspective to say, gosh, that doesn't work. And these are the ways the dominoes falls when you lead like that. And so I think my leadership style was being created when I didn't even really realize it was being created, because I was learning the different styles of leaderships that I didn't want to incorporate if I were ever to be in that position. But I remember sitting in certain meetings and thinking, man, I wouldn't have said it that way, or I would have taken a moment to gather my words before doing that. And I don't mean to say that as in leaders have to be perfect. Nobody is. And I think that's a really good aspect of a leader, is to be able to say, I'm not always good, and I'm not always going to be perfect, or to even apologize when they've done something that maybe is not great to an employee, coming back and saying, look, I didn't handle that the way that I wanted to handle that.
Yeah.
There were situations that I went through that I wish had gone differently, and that was shaping me to be the leader that I wanted to be and that I am today. And I'm grateful for those experiences. At the time, probably not so grateful, but uh, looking back, hindsight's always clearer. And I am thankful for that, because it was able to teach me that being a human being and coming to work and still being that human being, that's that magic connector that connects that, quote unquote C suite to your team members, or
Yep.
your we're a team. And if you have that mentality that you're a human, I'm a human, we're a human, that loyalty and that connection is instant and organic, and you can't put a price tag on that.
No, I agree with that. And that's such a key point that you just hit on as far as we've all had examples of good leaders. Well, hopefully we've had examples of good leaders, but I know that we've all
Hopefully.
had examples of poor leaders
Hmm.
or those who struggle with leadership. But I think it is important to take that mindset that, okay, well, there's still something to be learned from that experience. It might be
Hmm.
this was not the way to handle it. I know now not to do that myself and to try to handle it this way. But I think because it's easy, I've had conversations in my personal life and in my professional life with people who have that manager that just drives you up a wall, right? And it's easy to focus on the negative part of it, and I get that there's no ignoring that, but there's also the, okay, well, if I ever got the opportunity, I can see that what they did was not right, so now I don't have to learn that hard lesson the hard way, so to speak.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think that one of the major points that I learned within my career was it doesn't work to tell someone to leave their issues at the door. I mean, isn't that cute that we think that that's even possible? That we
Yeah.
think you can just leave your emotions and your humanness at the door. It doesn't work like that, and I learned quickly that what I would have preferred is for someone to say, you know what, you don't seem like yourself. Do you want to talk for a moment? Are you okay? It's checking in. It's those, I mean, thank goodness we live in a world now where mental health is not hush hush. We can
Yeah.
talk about the fact that, hey, you get stressed out and there's things that go on at home that are not going to make you shoot glitter everywhere. And sometimes you're not going to come to work and be, the glitter shooter everywhere.
Right.
But I love to teach my current team. I tell them all the time, if you're having a bad day, just tell me you're having a bad day. And if you want to talk about it, I'm here for you. Let's have a moment and talk about it. I have time for that. And I would make time for that because I would want time for that. I mean, it,
Yeah.
it seems pretty simple, right? I mean, if I would want someone to do a temp check on me, why as leaders are we not doing that for our team too?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, yeah, it's easy to think that we're all robots. Unfortunately, that's not the case. We do have
It's
emotions.
not.
So, no,
It's not.
yeah, I really appreciate your shout out to mental health because it's definitely, I mean, I know I've had my struggles with it. And if I wouldn't have
Absolutely.
taken the time to address it and just shoved it down like I did for the first 30 years of my life, then, like, I don't know. I wouldn't be the leader I am today. I know at the end of the day.
Absolutely. I mean, and I love that you said that. I love that you are outwardly saying, I've had my struggles with that because whether you know it or not, somebody listening to this is going, "Oh my gosh, I'm not alone."
Yeah,
I'm not alone. He's a CEO and he has said this out loud. That's magic. And I try to tell people that all the time that living your truth and saying the things that maybe sometimes are uncomfortable uh, are the most healing things to say out loud
yeah.
to yourself and to other people.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Yeah, we could talk about the mental health aspect of just life in general for hours, I feel.
Yeah.
So maybe a different episode at some point.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So as far as your journey into leadership, was there a time and was there a time when you felt like, okay, I'm ready to take this step into being, a manager, a leader, or, however you looked at it, or was it just like it just kind of happened and it's like, okay, well, yep, we're gonna go with it, kind of deal?
I absolutely have never said, David, I am ready to lead. I that never came out of my mouth, and it wasn't that I didn't think I could. I just didn't see that coming. It was kind of one of those trains that came right at me, and I'm like, wait, what? So and it wasn't until I got the position that I currently have now that I realized I was ready. I needed the opportunity to show myself
Yeah.
that I was ready. Uh, because I didn't know, I've been told most of my life, you care too much, you feel too much, you're
Mm,
too empathetic, you just it's just too much. Your heart's too much, and so I spent a lot of my life thinking, okay, I wish I could not care. I wish I could step away and just be that robot, that corporate robot that says we should follow all the rules,
yeah. Right.
do all those things. That's not me. When I see someone hurting, I want to know if they're okay. I want to know if they have a moment to talk, that I want them to know that I'm available to talk. And I was taught for a long time that that wasn't a leader. So I had this very big confusion of, could I be a leader with a heart and still be effective? So I struggled with that for a while, because when you're told things, back to mental health, David, when you're
Mm-hmm.
told things over and over and over again, you start to believe that you are too much. I care too much. I shouldn't ask how they are, or I should just say, leave it at the door, or all those other annoying things that leaders used to say, if you have time to lean, you have time to clean, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I knew that I would never be that kind of leader. So I didn't know if I was ready. Uh, Thank goodness that Juan did know I was ready, because he allowed me to see it organically for myself, and seeing it through the conversations that I have with my team, with what they bring to me or what they trust me with. And I am one of those leaders. I will tell you that I will say, I love you guys, because I mean it.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That doesn't mean that I can't have those hard conversations. It doesn't mean that I can't, have those difficult moments where I have to bring up something that's less than stellar.
Yeah.
I can do that, but at least they know I'm doing that and I care about them.
Yeah.
It's not cold.
I think it's one of the. So first, I'll say I'm glad to see that, especially, and maybe the pandemic really expedited this, or it's just the change in cultures over the last 5 to 10 years, let's just say. But there has been that space for the empathetic leader more than there ever has been, and
Yeah.
I think it's going to continue to go down that path, which is definitely a needed and a welcome thing to the industry. It is kind of one of the great ironies of our industry, though, that you went through DE, I went through DE recently. That we do the empathy mapping for our
Yep.
membership, right? And so we preach empathy for member situations, but yet we don't preach empathy for our employee situations.
Oh,
And it
amen.
and
Can I get
it
a hello?
yeah, it's very ironic that never seemed to be a connection that was made. Like, okay, well, you just show up and you have to be 100% empathetic to your member, but I don't really
Yep.
care about your situation. So good,
Right.
you figure it out, but you figure it out for them too, kind of deal. So
Absolutely.
it's great to see
Yep.
that we started to transition more towards like, okay, well, we actually do care about you as a employee, not
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
you just show up and care about everyone else type of deal. Because at
Yeah.
some point your bank runs out. Sorry to use that four-letter word, but your tank runs out. How about that?
Yeah.
And then there is no empathy to give, and so that's not a
It's
good
true.
situation either.
It's not, and I think the most magical thing that we can do as employees in credit unions or team members in credit unions is realize that our first members are our internal members.
Yeah.
They are our staff. They when you look at the numbers of staff that are struggling paycheck to paycheck, or having the same issues that the members across the desk from us are having, if we're not paying attention to that, we don't have a credit union. We just have a service, and that's not what we were ever created to be. So at the Louisiana Credit Union League, I'm so big on culture. Culture is one of my jams. And so we started a podcast as well, and
Yes.
I call it Culture Shock. And it's about our internal members, and how even down to marketing, how can getting internal buy-in for our marketing branding, how does that create a good culture? I mean, the things that you don't think about. But if somebody had not looked at me as a member and said, oh my goodness, they have potential to be a credit union employee, I wouldn't be where I am today. If they
Yeah.
hadn't looked at me as a human being and said, she struggled, she came to us struggling, but we're going to hire her.
Yeah.
um, I wouldn't be there. I'm so grateful for my first credit union. I'm so grateful that they saw that within me, because truly the good, the bad, the ugly nurtured me to where I am now.
Yeah. That's amazing. So as you worked your way through the journey into your VP role, is there anything specific that you did to prepare yourself for this?
I think I went through a little bit of imposter syndrome, which is kind of another
Oh yeah.
buzzword that has come out since the pandemic, which I'm grateful for because we all have had it. We've all had imposter syndrome. I
Oh
don't
yeah.
think I knew the word to put on it. Now we do have the word.
Yeah.
Uh, so imposter syndrome was in full effect, David. When I got the position, I was like, neat. Now what do I do?
Yep.
um, I was excited and but I was hesitant because I still was like, what do I bring to the table? Which is ironic, right? Because that's what I talk about when I go and talk and speak with other credit unions, talk about being flawsome, awesome with flaws, and deserving your seat at the table, and all of those good things. But I'm not immune to feeling the opposite,
Yeah.
and so I had to acknowledge that fact. Um, I went into it. I don't remember what the day was, but I just thought, I'm just going to set the tone that they know I'm a human being. I'm not going to come in that, oh my gosh, I am the VP. You answer to me. This is it's never like that for me, and it never will be for me. So I wanted them to know who I was as a human being. Uh, Equally, I invested in each of them as human beings too. I want to know who they are. Tell me about your family. What brings you joy? I need to know these things about you because we spend more time at work than we do in
Yeah.
our lives outside of work. So these are truly people that I needed to know in order to be a leader. And uh, cheesy enough, and it may sound cheesy, but I care about these people. I
Yeah.
care about these people with my whole entire heart. When they are having good, bad, ugly days, and they tell me about that, I don't know that they know how honored I feel that that they hold me in such a regard that they would share things like that with me, and in turn, I share with them because I want them to know I'm not immune to the bad moments and the bad lives and the bad or the bills that come up. You're like,
Oh
oh
yeah.
my god. Uh, we've all been there, and I
Yeah.
think when you are human, especially with your team, it allows them to feel free enough to be human in return, and seeing them be human and seeing them succeed and seeing them rock at their jobs because I care about them, it feels so good.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I kudos to you again for taking that approach, and I think it just helps build a different level of connection with your employees to have those conversations, as opposed
Mhm.
to, I mean, you mentioned it before. There are certain conversations where it is, I am the boss in this situation. You're the employee. Unfortunately, we have to have this tough conversation.
Yep.
You can't avoid
Yep.
that when you're in leadership, but I think
Right.
outside of that, it's also so important to be able to build a strong connection with your employees and to be able to see
Mhm.
them as more than just pawns on the chessboard, so to speak, that they are people
Right.
and that they have things going on. And sometimes it can help too for both parties to say, like, I was in your shoes. You talked about your struggles when you
Yep.
had your son and everything. And okay, I understand what you're going through. Now what can I do to help you with that? And maybe there is no answer to that, but just be able to have that because I'm sure you're not walking around every day saying like, well, yeah, when I first started, I was struggling. When I first started, but
Yeah.
so people
Yeah.
may not know that about you, but then they may
Yep.
say like, well, I don't want to say anything because normally I can't talk to my manager or my leader about this. But then,
Yep.
you say, well, hey, I understand. Let's talk about that. And
Yep.
it builds a different connection and then they feel more secure at work ultimately.
Absolutely. And I really think that I don't know when it changed, honestly, but I think that there was this stigma that if you were a leader and you showed compassion and empathy, that it made you a weak leader,
Yep.
that it made you not a stand-up type of leader. And I went through enough of leadership that was the opposite of that. That was very intimidating, very strict, very scary. They would walk
Yep.
into the room and you felt tension. Um, I knew that that didn't help me grow at all. And I knew that there was a space for heart in leadership, but I do still have to give some recognition to those leaders that taught me what didn't work,
Yeah.
and that there is a space. And I don't know if we can thank the pandemic for anything. I don't know if there's a thank
Yeah.
you card for COVID, but I do think the atmosphere that opened up for some empathy, some internal empathy, and caused us to take a look at our internal members, our coworkers, our team members, our friends, and say, it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
And we can talk about it. And as your direct report, I'm not going to look at you any different if you're having a bad day. You still deserve to be here. And I'm not saying shred documents and go haywire and you still deserve to be here, but I'm saying
Yeah.
a bad day is a bad day. And if I don't give you that opportunity to tell me that and just judge you on maybe your bad moment, that's not fair. I don't want to be judged on my bad moments.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great advice. So I know you talked about Juan, the president there at the Louisiana League. Besides him, or maybe you want to talk about that a little bit more even, but who helped you along your journey into leadership?
So I was really, really blessed when I went through the DE program in Madison, Wisconsin, that one of the people that was facilitating was Lois Kitch.
Oh, yeah.
And she is an absolutely, if you know Lois, you love Lois. There's no way around that. But she believed in me instantly. She didn't even know me, and she believed in me because I remember being in DE class, and I think she could probably see my face of fear, like what am I doing here? And I remember her coming up to me and giving me little pep talks through the whole thing, and I didn't feel like I had a whole lot to contribute to my table because I didn't have that history knowledge of credit unions. I didn't really have the operational knowledge of credit unions. I was so new. She asked me that when I graduated, she asked me to come back and be a graduation speaker the very next class. And then I've been a mentor, I think 4 times this last year. I was able to help facilitate, which was kind of the
Oh,
cherry on the
cool.
top. But I remember having a lot of conversations with her, and I still text her to this day. We still talk to this day, and where she would just say in her cute little voice, "Honey, you can do this." And so I really held on to that when I had situations where I thought, I don't know that I may be right for this credit union, but I don't know that this credit union is right for me.
Yeah.
And saying that out loud and being okay with being like, I don't know what that means, but I'm going to find out. So having those conversations, but I always say I have a little Lois on my shoulder that says, honey, you can do it. And so anytime I've doubted myself, I either will call her or I can hear my little Lois on my shoulder. And she really was the beginning of standing up as Nanci and not apologizing of being Nanci.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I've met Willis before. I didn't really I went to D just this last year, so I know
Oh,
that
okay.
there's been a lot of transition with the
Yep.
with the course leadership and whatnot, but I know she was amazing. She is an amazing advocate for the program, obviously, but just an
Yes.
amazing person in general. So that's
Yes.
awesome that she was there to help you because going through DE, even though my experience with the industry is I started when I was in high school. So I mean, I've been in it for 20 some years, but even when I went last year, I was intimidated just because
Yeah.
I'm like, what am I bringing to the table? I mean, I had the same thoughts. And
Right.
so someone who was in it for 20 some years versus someone who was just joining, like it's easy to have those thoughts going into it. So it was amazing that she identified that and then was able
Hmm.
to help calm some of those concerns that you had. Because you could have
She
easily
did.
walked away from that going, I don't belong here. I don't belong in
Yeah.
credit unions. I don't belong in at
Yeah.
DE especially. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think probably day one I was like, what, how much is the
yeah,
flight home? Yeah, I just didn't know what I was doing there.
yep,
And from day one, she invested in me for some reason, and I don't know really to this day what made her connect with me or want me to succeed, which I think is wonderful. But she really was the catalyst of me leaving DE and going, darn it, I belong here. I
yeah,
don't know in what capacity yet, but I'm going to find out.
that's
And
awesome.
and I did, and she helped me along the way with phone calls, and I did a lot of bumping around. I was at a credit union, then I had an opportunity to work for the other side for a credit union vendor, and I was at a credit union, and I went to I've always been very honest with my CEOs, and I said, I have an opportunity. And if I don't take it, I'm going to regret not taking it because I'm going to be like, what if? And she was like, go. And if you don't like it, come back. And I'm like, okay. Turns out I came back because I like credit unions and working for them.
Yeah.
But I had these leaders along peppered along the way that were like, I see your value and I see that you're trying to find where you're at and where you want to be. And it's okay to fumble
Yeah.
a little bit and figure it out. So I fumbled for a little bit, and that really kind of made me who I am right now.
Uh,
So
yeah, that's awesome. You've shared a lot of really good nuggets of wisdom, and so this next question might be a little difficult to narrow it down. But is there one specific piece of advice that really changed your career?
um, yes, and I think I don't know where it came from. I don't know if it even came from my head. I have no idea. But the one thing, let's be honest, there's a lot going on up there. And, yeah, no, I think it is once to stop dictating who you are, your importance, your value, your skill level based on the words underneath your job description. If I had just said, okay, I'm a teller and that's what I'm going to be, there's people that do that, and that's fantastic because woo, tellers, we need them, we love them, they are everything.
Yep.
I just knew I wanted something different, but I didn't know that if I was deserving of something different, if my education, my lack of education made me not deserve. Um, so I guess the best advice that I have lived off of um, is to stop dictating your worth based on the words underneath your current job description. If you want it, go for it, because the
Yeah.
worst that someone can say is no or not yet or okay, well then let me prove you wrong.
Right.
Let me get there. And I think it's people like Juan and like Lois and all the many people that I've met in the DE universe or the credit union universe, which is huge but feels so small,
Yeah, it
right?
does.
That have looked at me and said things to me that have made me go, oh my gosh, you see me for who I am, and you're not asking me to be less, and I do belong here. So I guess my advice really is to just, sorry, Nike, just do it. Just
Yeah.
do it. Um, if you are scared, do it even more because that's where you're going to grow as a person. So I've done a lot of things in my credit union journey scared, absolutely terrified. And it has helped me grow as a person. It has helped me accept myself as a human being. And in turns, I think it's helped me be a better leader.
Yeah. I mean that's so important, and whether you're just starting out on your journey or someone who has is maybe at the precipice and you've hit the you've hit the ideal job or whatever. I mean, you can always there's always learning opportunities, and you never stop learning. And like you said,
Mhm.
don't ever get content with, not to say that you shouldn't be happy where you're at, but if you want something more for yourself or you want to take on a new challenge or whatever the case is, like you said, just do it,
Do
because
it.
all of a sudden
Do it.
we're going to wake up when we're 60, 70, and we're going to go, well, now I don't have time to do the things that I want to do or whatnot.
Absolutely. And I think about growing up and applying for jobs. I used to not apply for jobs that would say bachelor degree required, or because I don't have that piece of paper, and I don't have that piece of paper today. And that used to be shame for
Mm,
me. Like, don't talk about that. And also don't talk about mental health. And also don't talk, but really the education piece was a huge form of shame for me because I grew up um, thinking that you had to have that to succeed, like to have any job worth a job. Um, and now I can talk about it openly, saying I don't have a piece of paper on the wall. I always, on my resume, it says I graduated from the University of Heart and Hustle because I did. Top of
yeah.
my class. But talking about that now, I've had so many people that write me and say, "Oh my gosh, I don't either," and I can't talk about it because it feels so bad. So now I send people in the mail Heart and Hustle University
Oh, that's
diplomas
cute.
to have on their wall because education is not one way, success is not one way. There's we all know that life can throw curveballs, and there's no straight line to success. It's squiggly as heck.
Oh, yeah.
And if higher education worked for you, awesome. If it doesn't, there's other ways to succeed too. And I'm proud to say that I used my heart and my hustle to get where I am today, despite not having that diploma.
Yeah, that's no, that's such a great message. And I know I've worked at a couple different credit unions even where even the people who do have um, they go to school for the bachelor's or associates or
Hmm.
whatever, and they'll come work for you because they couldn't find a job in that field. So even the people who do have the paper, you're like, well, okay, well, I don't know how a degree in marine biology is going to help you here, but I mean, maybe we'll start giving loans out to dolphins. I don't know, but
Right.
it is important to like don't let that be a limiting factor for you, regardless of where
Right.
you want to end up in the org chart. Because, and
Right.
I know some organizations, I mean, even ours to a degree, like depending on where you want to end up, like we prefer it, but it's not to say that
Sure.
we're going
Yeah.
to not have that conversation. Um, for someone,
Absolutely.
because yeah, what you are as an employee and as a person is way more important than the 4 years you dedicated to a college or whatnot.
Yeah, it's very, very true, and I'm thankful that we live in a society now that acknowledges that people can have talents other ways too, other than a 4 year university. I mean, thank goodness tech schools are a thing now, and
Yeah.
community colleges. My son, we had just spoken about this before. Getting on, you just turned 18, you just graduated, and we went through the pros and cons of a 4 year college, a tech college. You know. What he wanted to be when he grew up, what the possibility of what he could make, and I am not. I try, and I've been a victim of this as well, and been somebody that has said this as well. We put so much pressure on our young people. What are you doing now? They barely graduate high school, and we're like, "What are you doing with your life?" Because
Right.
half of us don't know either. But hey, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Um, and so I've made it a real conscious effort to not put that pressure on newly graduated or almost graduating seniors in high school, but to say, oh, gosh, what's your next adventure? What's happening next? Are you going to work? Are you going to, because that's okay. Are you going to take a break? That's okay too.
Yeah.
I mean, it is okay to do what works for you. We are not a one size fits all world. And the more we realize that and understand that, the better off we'll be. Because I tell you what, if I'm interviewing someone and they don't have that diploma, but they have passion and they have a great personality and they have a heart, uh, you can't pay for that. you
Yeah.
you you can't get that at a 4 year university. You can, that's a person, that's, you're investing in that person. So I highly encourage people out there that are in the hiring positions, to really take on some of those interviews that maybe don't have that education but have something else that stands out, because they're worth a look too.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say you can teach the what, the skills needed for a job,
Yeah.
but you can't teach the why. It's very difficult to teach a why you
Oh,
want to
it's
do
so
it. What's the
true.
passion?
It's so true. If we were being, if I was based on my ability to do math, that would have not landed me the job at all. In fact, most of my math professors and teachers probably would be like, "Wait a minute, Nancy works in finance." I struggled. I thought really once they added the alphabet to math, I was like, "I'm out." I don't know why. I don't know why that's there. That's
Yeah,
not happening. So if somebody had looked at me in that aspect, I wouldn't be where I was,
yeah,
where I am today. But they saw me for a person that was eager to learn, and really had, I had passion and loyalty already because they had helped me. So don't discount the people on the other side of the desk asking for help, because they're going to be your most loyal employees, honestly.
yeah, absolutely. And I'll give a quick story from the flip side. I was really gifted in math in high school and throughout my education, but yet I joke with my old boss, my first boss, because I was such a terrible teller that she probably could have fired me and would have changed the whole trajectory of my career. Because I mean, the times I was off, and she'd be like, "What the heck happened here? Like, really, you were here for an hour and you're off like this weird amount."
Yep.
And so it's like that just goes to prove, like, I had the education part of it down, but
Yeah.
geez, it took me a while to figure out the application of that in the real world. So
Yeah. Oh, I struggle. I mean, I again shout out to tellers because the things that they have to figure out, the questions. Like I remember, like really apparent fear when certain members would walk in because I knew that they were going to be asking questions that
yeah,
would entail some math on my end,
mm,
and I didn't want to let them down. I didn't want to. But
yeah,
I it also going back to leadership. I had math teachers that would know that I wasn't good at it and call me to the front of the class to do a problem. So they knew I would struggle, but put me on display to struggle.
sure,
So it caused that feeling of being insufficient. I couldn't, I'm not good enough to do it. When in reality, I am, but I had that impression from that kind of
yeah,
teacher leadership that it wasn't a good thing. But what I brought to the teller table that I knew I could bring was I'm going to remember your dog's name. I'm going to
yeah,
remember they had surgery 2 weeks ago. Your child's birthday's tomorrow. I'm going to remember that stuff. And the rest I was taught.
yeah, absolutely. So obviously, every path, you mentioned it before, every path is not a straight line forward. It's always got some ups and downs. What are
Yeah.
some of the challenges that you faced along your career journey?
I think that we touched on it a little bit previously, but intimidation leadership was definitely something that I struggled with in my entry into the credit union world. We went from a small credit union to one that was merging. So
Mm.
we had a CEO change in between there. The culture changed. I can speak. Changed in look yeah, it changed instantly, and things got tough.
Mm.
So I think the challenge for me was to find my voice. I knew that I could be quiet, I could stand in line, I could keep my head down,
Hmm.
but when things didn't feel right, if I didn't speak up, I couldn't expect somebody else to speak up.
Yeah.
So I really had to start being an advocate for myself and stop hiding how I felt about certain things. Um, my mom would say to you right now, why did you wait so long to use your mouth for good? Um, it took me a while to figure out that I could say things in tactful ways that were not
Hmm.
a teenager talking to their mom. But I realized that through those struggles, if I needed to bring something to the table that was less than favorable, that I was going to bring it to the table with examples and ways to fix it. Because I wanted to be heard and respected. Along the way, I met some very challenging leadership situations, some very challenging um, things where I remember one situation where I had a CEO tell me that I was a product of the credit union, more or
Mm.
less that they made me. And
Wow.
it took me a moment. I think teenager Nancy would have been like, this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
But I went home that night and I thought, oh my gosh, is this what it feels like to feel offended? Because I think I'm offended. And so I went back and had that tough conversation and said, that bothers me. Who I am is not thanks to you.
Yeah.
The opportunity is wonderful and it's shaping me as an employee, but who I am is not your product. And that really kind of set the tone for how I started moving forward and started speaking up when it mattered to me, because the more you shove things down and just kind of are passive, the more resentful you get as an
Yeah.
employee, and that doesn't do anyone good, especially our members. So
Yeah.
um, I think the challenges that I have had are learning when to speak up, how to speak up, and to know that regardless of if they hear you or not, you need to speak up.
Yeah.
So, and I'm grateful for those hard conversations that made your palms sweaty and
Yeah.
all of those things, because it taught me that it's necessary. I can't expect anyone that I report to stand up for me if I'm not going to do it for myself.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's such a key piece of advice, not just for your professional life, but for your personal life. Because I've seen
Yeah.
unfortunately too many instances where people are unwilling. Well, I guess we'll just put it that way. Unwilling to
Mhm.
say anything about something, and then,
Yeah.
like you said, then they have those negative feelings that are tied with, well, things aren't going my
Mhm.
way, or whatever. Or I'm not being heard, and then it just layers on each other. And unfortunately, then
Festers.
after you do it for 40, 50 years,
Oh,
it can turn ugly. Ultimately,
it
unfortunately.
can, and it's a disease.
Yeah.
It's an internal. It becomes an internal disease because misery loves company.
Yeah.
So you've got the quote unquote water cooler talk and the side chatter that just leads to this toxic environment. And so I think as a leader now, that's what I work really hard at combating. Like, let's talk about it now. Let's
Yeah.
not wait. Let's not give it a week and see how we feel. Let's just talk about it now and figure out how we can move forward and what some ideas are, because I want my team to feel like they're a part of the solution, and if they have a problem, that they can be proud of how their part was in fixing that.
Yeah. That's amazing. So when you're faced with these challenging times, from where do you seek inspiration or confidence to get you through it?
I well, I mean, personally, of course, my family has been super supportive. I have been through some really hard stuff, especially these last couple years. I had cancer.
Mm.
um I lost my aunt. 2 days later, I lost my father.
Ah,
I just lost a cousin this last week. There's been a lot of loss and a lot of challenging moments, but my family has been steadfast. My mom, my husband, my son, my sister, all of those folks are absolutely my heart. So of course my family, but I draw inspiration from the people in my network, my credit union family network, that I know I can go to and say, I'm struggling, and they're not going to judge me for the struggle I'm having. They're going to
yeah.
listen and help me. Um, I have meetings on my calendar that are every single month with people that are just meetings that bring me joy. They're just people that I want to talk to. That for some reason they want to talk to me, and I want to talk to them, and it makes us feel good. And we don't have to
Yeah.
talk about ratios or anything like that. It's just how you doing. So I draw inspiration from the people that have invested in me to be my friend, to be my mentor, and to be people that I look up to in this industry, because it takes all of us. It really takes all of us, and we
Yeah.
need to take care of one another.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I will say first and foremost, on behalf of myself, but then the listeners, condolences, because yeah, obviously
Oh,
losing
thank
family members is difficult. I know it's a part of life, but it's not. That doesn't make it any easier to accept
It
that.
doesn't. Literally, I had gotten a job in Louisiana, and I think it was, oh gosh, it's kind of a blur, but I think I was only there maybe a week and a half before.
Oh,
So I had to miss my first board meeting. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is just terrible.
huh,
I was met with nothing but kindness. I was met with nothing but kindness. It has been a rough couple of years, but when I think about it, one of the best stories I can tell is when I was dealing with cancer. What some of my friends threw me a benefit for the medical bills that were
sure.
atrocious. The first people through the door of that benefit were credit union members,
Mm,
and that comes full circle for me. That they don't they didn't have to come to that. That has
yeah,
nothing to do with their account. That has nothing to do with their business at the credit union, but they invested in me. And to me, that's the full circle credit union loyalty that I love and I live for.
that's awesome. And are you cancer free now,
I
or
am cancer free
okay?
now. Yes,
Well,
yes, yay.
amazing. No,
Yes,
that's
yes.
awesome.
Yeah, but also those moments help you relate to people that are going through it. Medical
Absolutely.
debt is crazy for everyone.
Yeah.
And being able to say to people and talk about it out loud, oh my gosh, I know, I've been there and it's awful. I mean, I got my bill for my surgery on the drive to my surgery. That's how
Yeah.
crazy it was. And I remember thinking, I'm just going to turn around.
Yeah.
I'm just not doing it. And there's that fear, but I have learned really quickly the things that are typically embarrassing, or maybe that you don't want to talk about, or that are hard to talk about, are the things we need to be talking about,
Yeah.
because someone else out there needs to hear it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll take a moment just to say that, you touch base on your network of your colleagues and
Yeah.
people that you look up to and that you have a close connection with. And I think that that's why it's so important for us. And I know that the pandemic really stifled this. So it's been a little bit of a challenge, and you're probably seeing it on the league level, with getting people to come back out to events and whatnot. But it's
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
important to build and develop a network of colleagues. And it doesn't have to
Hmm.
be people that are in positions that you're looking to take on, or it doesn't even have to be leadership positions, but just
Yeah.
having a network of trusted individuals that you can rely on, that you can talk to, whether it is about shop, because we all have
Yep.
those questions, but then also
Yep.
just to say, hey, I'm really struggling today. Can I talk to you about this or whatever? Because
Yep.
I know I'm part of another network, or going to be part of another network, and the CEO of that's kind of leading that charge said that a lot of the newer leadership that's coming in over the last couple of years, they're feeling isolated because their league isn't necessarily helping them as a smaller credit union,
Hmm.
unfortunately. And
Hmm.
I can't imagine tackling this job without the collaboration opportunities that have been presented. I mean, we are in a unique industry where that credit unions do have, for the most part, have that collaborative nature, but you do have to
Hmm.
go out there and attend these conferences, attend
Yeah.
DE, attend different things, meet different people, start to build that network, because I couldn't imagine trying to do this job on my own, not just from the numbers, the X's and O's and the numbers sense and whatnot,
Yeah.
but just literally from like some days, like you said, there's times when you face challenges and you need to find some inspiration because you just don't have it in yourself to do it. And
Hmm.
if it wasn't for those other people, I don't know how. I know you could do it, but I don't know how you could get through it successfully if you didn't have those
Absolutely.
people.
Well, and I think the thing, if I can take away, I could take away a million things from the DE program, but one of the things that I take away that I have used in my entirety thus far career here, in the credit union movement, is to leave titles at the door when you're
Yeah.
networking, when you are at conferences, when you are. I love YPs. I love YPs. And one of the things that I love to tell them is don't ask them their title. Just go talk to them. Just go talk to them. Their title
Yeah.
doesn't determine if you're worthy for them to talk to you. So I love the fact that one of my favorite DE memories was I was a mentor, and Jim Nussel was a student, and
Oh,
it was amazing to me at the time how many people had no idea he was Jim Nussel, that who he was.
sure.
And he was fully invested in it. I mean, he grew out scruffy beard and he was like just all in it. He was wonderful. And then we toured the CUNA building at the CUNA at the time,
Yeah.
and there was a picture of him. People were like, they
Oh
had no
shoot.
idea it was him.
Yeah.
But the fact that he was able to leave his title at the door, I mean, pretty big title, and he was able to joke and laugh and take selfies with people, and I
Yeah.
mean he was just all in, and that's where I learned in my career that I don't lead with my title. I lead with Nanci. I'm
Yeah.
Nanci. Tell me about you. What brings you joy? What makes you smile?
Yeah.
What are your hobbies? I want to know who you are. And in the credit union movement, more often than not, people want to talk to you about who they are and what they. I always say that you're never going to see Wells Fargo or another bank skipping down, holding hands down the road.
Right.
But credit unions, more often than not, will hold hands and help one another.
Oh yeah.
And I love that. I love that, and that's why I fit here, and that's why I'm never leaving.
That's awesome. Well, that kind of transitions to the next question, and you did address the first part of it, which was what drew you into the movement. But
Yeah,
besides that collaborative hand holding, skipping down the
yeah.
sidewalk feeling, what else has kept you in the industry in general?
I think what has kept me in the industry in general, other than the people, because I honestly, truly, to my core, love the people in this movement. Um, I think it's the fact that the credit union realm is the first place where I was free to be who I was, and still seen to be someone that could grow in the industry, not someone that was just an employee, just a body, just a person that would clock in. I was able to advance in the credit union movement because of the connections that I made, because of the people I met along the way that helped mentor me. It really, I always say, if you're comparing banks and credit unions, banks are going to give you maybe a fist bump, but credit unions are going to hug you. And I feel that way internally for our internal culture as a credit union. I have really had people hug me to where I am today, and really give me that comfort of knowing that not only can I grow, but I was worthy to grow and worthy to be here. So I am really grateful for that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Personal growth is one of my big pieces that I push on our employees here, and it, as much as we have a great staff here, so I want to keep everyone here, but at the end of the day, I also want people to be happy in their life. So if
Yeah.
there's an opportunity that's out there, obviously I'd love to keep everyone in the credit union industry.
Yep.
So I'm not on record of like pushing people out of it by
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
stretch,
Yeah.
but life is too short. Whether
Yes.
it doesn't matter for whatever reason, life is just too short to be somewhere that you're not happy. So
Yep.
I'm
And
a
I
big
was there.
proponent of that.
Yep. I was there. I absolutely was there. And I say that when, like, we had spoken about that had gotten the opportunity to speak to the 2024 GAC crashers this year, the
Hmm.
filing crashers. And um, that's what I tell them. And there's always this gasp, but it's true. You might be right for your credit union, but your credit union may not be right for you.
Yeah.
And saying that out loud is okay, because there are other credit unions that would fight for who you are and want you there.
Yeah.
Find that credit union and live that passion, because we spend too much time at work. We spend too much time to be unhappy. So find that happy. And there's a credit union looking for who you are, exactly who
Absolutely.
you are.
No, absolutely. I agree with that.
Yeah.
So I appreciate everything you've shared throughout this conversation, because it's been just absolutely delightful, first and
Okay.
foremost, but just really insightful. And I really appreciate, just sharing your story and all the tips you've had. So I'll get you out on this question.
Okay.
And I know you've shared a lot of advice, so feel free to use one of the nuggets that you've shared already. But for someone who's just starting out on their leadership journey, or has just started out at the credit union even, what's one piece of advice that you would give them?
Don't forget you're human too. Give yourself the grace to be human. Give yourself the grace to admit that you're human to your team, and have those conversations, even the hard ones, with heart, because it will get you further personally, and it will get you that magical loyalty that you're looking for in team members. Just don't ignore the fact that you're a human being, and it's okay to say it out loud.
Yeah, that's so true. Just acknowledging. Yeah, I can't remember if we talked about during the episode or if it was beforehand, but just
Yep,
sometimes when you acknowledge it and say it out loud, that like that's such a big step in its own. And
it is.
so to be able to, whether you say it to someone else or sometimes you just have to admit that stuff to yourself.
It's so true.
You
Yeah, I
know.
had a conversation with one of my team members, when I just had another recent death, and my biggest joy was that we work on teams, which most of you probably are
Hmm.
familiar with. So we have a bazillion different teams rooms, but each one of them reached out to me separately and said, "I'm just checking on you,"
Hmm.
and that, I don't know that they know how amazing that is, to feel, and to know that there's that connection enough, that they care enough to say, "Hey, this is tough. You've had a tough couple years, and
Yeah.
this is another one. And are you okay?" And I guess seeing those messages, I think that's when I can say, I know what success feels like.
Yeah, that's amazing. Um, no, I appreciate you sharing that. I will give you an opportunity too, or I'll finish with this question, kind of off the rails, so to speak. But
Sure.
so you mentioned your podcast, Culture Shock. Can you
Yes.
tell us where can we find that?
Yes. Well, right now I'm very new to the podcast world. We are on Spotify. I'm working on getting it on the Apple. I'm an Android user, which Juan makes fun of me endlessly for. But
Same here. Same here.
you
No
are you an
iPhone.
Android user?
Oh yeah, no
Oh,
iPhone for me.
David, did we just become best friends? I
We
think
sure did.
you hear that, Juan Fernandez. They're
Yeah.
Android users. yes, it's a big topic in our
Oh, I
team
imagine.
world. But right now, I posted on my LinkedIn. We posted on our league LinkedIn, but it is always linked. It's once a month, middle of the month. And it is all about internal culture, not forgetting that our members start with the people that are helping our members.
Yeah,
So we talk about mental health, we talk about positivity culture, leading with heart, all of those good things. And I have everybody on my podcast from Tellerline all the way up to Sweet Sweet, and just I just want people not to forget that some of our most important people start behind the desk.
absolutely.
Um, and if we don't take care of those folks, they're not going to take care of our members, and it's a full circle. So
Yeah.
yes, I'm new to the podcast world, but we're working out the kinks, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're doing that, and I'm glad that you took the jump. Kind of synonymous for kind of a symbol for what you've done throughout your career. Just jump in and figure it out as you go, right? But I'm glad that you're doing it because we've culture has been, thankfully, it's been a point of emphasis more over the last couple of years. But I
Yeah.
think building good culture, because it is difficult. It's not an
Yep.
easy road, especially when you're trying to undo maybe some bad habits that
Yep.
were, whether it was just during the pandemic or it's been for the last couple of decades. I mean,
Yep.
definitely a challenging road, but it's a needed conversation to be had. So I'm glad that you're doing that and
Yeah.
appreciate that you're doing it.
Oh, thank you. It's absolutely a labor of love. I love it, and I'm excited. It's we're only on episode 3, so it's rather new, but it's definitely something that has has brought me joy, and I
Good.
really recommend. That's a couple things I recommend, David, is doing something during your week that brings you joy, that is
Yes.
work related,
Yep.
and setting some time on your calendar to talk with folks, just to talk with them. Not it doesn't have to be shop, it doesn't have to be, but just a pulse check in on your connections and your network friends in your credit union world. Um, put things on your calendar that bring you joy that you know you're going to look forward to.
Yeah, definitely. So for our listeners, head on over, check out that podcast. Again, it's Culture Shock.
It's
Correct is
called
the name of
Culture
it.
Shock.
Yep.
Yep, and I do put it on my LinkedIn.
Yep.
I will add you on LinkedIn. You add me, I'll add you. I let's be friends. So
Perfect.
add me, and I would be happy to talk to you anytime. But yes, my LinkedIn is pretty active. So if you head over there, you'll get to know me pretty quick.
Sounds great. Well, thanks, Nancy. I really appreciate the conversation today.
Yes, I appreciate it too. Thank you so much for having me, David.
Absolutely.